Jack was spending some of his summer holidays with his nan and grandad. They lived miles from anywhere out in the country. Jack had stayed with them for every summer for as far back as he could remember, which wasn't that far because he was only 5. Over breakfast, using his serious voice, Grandad announced, watch out, there's a Bomble about." "What's a Bomble?" said Jack. "Oh, of course. You wouldn't have heard about Bombles living in the city. A Bomble is big and hairy, it has one eye, one leg, and it hops around shouting, 'Bomble, Bomble.'" Grandad paused and shook his head. "You wouldn't want to meet a Bomble." Jack also shook his head. He certainly wouldn't. Jack's job that morning was to pick as many apples as he could from Grandad's biggest apple tree in the field at the back of his grandparents' house. Grandad said he thought Jack wouldn't be able to get all the apples, but Jack intended to prove him wrong. As he skipped down the field, he repeated over and over, watch out, there's a Bomble about. Watch out, there's a Bomble about." Grandad's big apple tree was full of large red apples. Jack picked all he could and then climbed up the tree as high as he could to pick some more, but there were still lots left he couldn't reach. He scratched his head. How would he be able to get the apples right at the top of the tree? "Of course," said Jack aloud. "He would shake the tree and the apples would fall off." But the tree had a thick trunk, and push and shove as he might, Jack couldn't make the tree shake enough to dislodge all the apples. Jack sat down with his back against the tree and thought as hard as he could. He thought so hard that he closed his eyes tight shut, screwed up his face, and tried holding his breath. Surely that would help. But in the middle of his big thing, he heard something that made him open his eyes quickly. "Bomble, Bomble, Bomble, Bomble." Watch out, there's a Bomble about," Jack muttered under his breath. Well, there it was. And it was big and hairy. It had one eye, one leg, and it was hopping down the field shouting, "Bomble, Bomble." Jack quickly hid behind the tree. The Bomble hadn't seen him, and it hopped straight past the big apple tree, making the earth shake and dislodging apples as it went. "Bomble, Bomble, Bomble." Jack stayed very still. It looked like he'd got away with his first Bomble sighting. He bent down and picked up one of the apples the Bomble had dislodged from the tree. He'd got an idea. Grandad wouldn't like his plan, but all the same, Jack jumped out from behind the tree and started shouting at the Bomble. "Stop, Bomble, come back here," Jack shouted as loud as he could, but the Bomble was making so much noise hopping and shouting, he didn't hear Jack. He just carried on hopping down the field. "Bomble, Bomble, Bomble." Jack had one chance to get the Bomble's attention. He threw the apple he'd been holding as hard as he could, and it flew in a graceful arc, hitting the Bomble square on the middle of his hairy head. "Bomble!" shouted the Bomble as it stopped and turned around and glared at Jack with his one eye. And he started hopping back up the field towards Jack with surprising speed. "Bomble, Bomble, Bomble, Bomble." Jack had to be quick. He climbed back up the tree, just out of reach of the Bomble's grasping hands. The Bomble hopped around and around the tree, trying to catch hold of Jack with his outstretched hand. With every circuit of the tree, more apples fell to the ground. Jack's plan was working, but the frantically hopping Bomble was also shaking Jack's hold on the tree, and he was close to falling out into the Bomble's arms. Just when Jack felt he couldn't hold on any longer, the Bomble suddenly stopped and looked up the field. Jack looked in the same direction and saw his granddad running down the field towards the Bomble, waving a big stick above his head. The Bomble took one last look at Jack and hopped off as quickly as he could. Bomble, 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 Bomble. Jack could see that Grandad was angry with him as he helped him down from the tree. But when Grandad saw all the apples the Bomble had shaken from the tree, he soon forgot about being angry. They stood side by side and watched the Bomble make his escape, and they both laughed and repeated together, watch out, there's a Bomble about."